Nowadays, people are spoiled for choice in terms of Western shooters, you know. You've obviously got Red Dead Redemption as one of Rockstar's best titles, but do you dislike the paradoxical design choices, or is your system dying under the weight of its requirements? Well, fret not, because you can boot up Fistful of Frags and pass the whiskey in this sourced shooter to your heart's content. And alternatively, there's my favorite Hunt Showdown, which totally deserves a better video than what I came up with so long ago. Yeah, it's not technically a western since it's taking place in Louisiana, but you can do all sorts of cowboy stuff you dreamt of, so it definitely counts. But if you were a gamer in mid-2000s, it was pretty dire if you were playing on the PC. The last memorable western shooter was Outlaws from LucasArts all the way back to 1997. While it may sound like 8 years wasn't that long ago, believe me when I say that in this case it meant that the game was downright prehistoric for 2005. All this isn't necessarily bad of course, but that period brought considerable improvement in gaming. But as always, Slavjank did what it always did best, and this is to bring the salvation we all deserved. This came in the form of Call of Juarez, the 2006 shooter made by the Polish studio Techland. It generated quite the buzz with the amount of eye candy it produced, and I have to say that for the most part, it's still quite the looker. Just don't stare too much at the cave walls, sheesh. I wasn't too hot on the name since it made it sound like it was going to be a Call of Duty copycat. Granted, Modern Warfare was still months away from turning the series into a powerhouse we now know, but it was still the hottest shooter franchise of the time. Ironically, this development made Call of Juarez's name age even worse because beyond both being shooters, there are little to no similarities between the two. But let's get into the game and see what makes it tick. The first thing of interest is that the game's story puts you in the shoes of not one but two protagonists. The first level puts you in the shoes of Billy Candle, a young man who was treated as an outcast his entire life. After he failed to find the legendary lost Aztec treasure of Juarez, he returned to his hometown to meet his mother. It's all fine and dandy until you're thrown into a tutorial for the game's stealth section? I promised you a western shooter and I know how this whole thing looks. Well, after you steal this poor sod's gun, you're in for some fun time and the sheriff confiscates it. Fuck. But Billy's fortunes rise once more with the prospect of stealing the derringer of the local prostitute. But because you don't have any money to pay her Andrew Tate looking pimp, you'll have to resort to a clandestine entry. The efforts pay off, and by that I mean they don't pay off at all, and the gun you steal has no bullets. To add insult to injury, you've been found out, and now you have to run out of town since the pimp's goons are all out to kill you. A reasonable reaction, of course. This entire section is awkward as hell. Well, firstly, because stealth is fudgy at best, the music becomes hilariously intense every time an enemy gets alerted by the sounds you're making and only adds to the experience. It's a knee slapper every time your enemies stare into the void and the soundtrack acts like it's showtime. The way stealth itself plays isn't much better either. You can technically kill some of the goons, but you're going to be instantly gunned down from a distance by the rest of them. So you're basically left slowly crawling past this building where you're met by a broken fence. It certainly looks like it's the intended path, but after a few steps past it, 3 enemies get spawned in the most blatant way imaginable and proceed to easily gun you down. So I thought to myself, okay, I should keep going back here, maybe. It's been some time since I last played Call of Juarez, so I don't remember exactly where I should go. So I keep going on the street and what the hell is this? Man, this game's gonna be a proper Slavjank, isn't it? In reality, the intended path is past that broken fence as I initially thought. You're supposed to be chased and shot at by the goons, and it's not good. Whether you die or not during this scene rests in the hands of the RNG alone. It got so bad that I had to use cheats, something I never did for any game I recorded before. Right after this chase scene, you're left to some awkward platforming with the help of your trusty whip. It's not a bad tool overall, and it can one-kill enemies with a headshot if you're close enough, but it doesn't change that platforming is sort of janky. After yet another stealth section where you're meant to steal a gun, this time with bullets thank goodness, you're off to meet Billy's mother. Cue in a scream, add some dramatic music.
Ah! Thomas! You get away from her, you bastard! You hear me? I'll kill you!
And roll the curtains for this introductory level. Wait a minute, I didn't get to fire a gun, what the f? It's a lackluster first impression filled to the brim with questionable design decisions. I swear it gets better though. That's because you get the chance to play as the game's second protagonist. Oh boy, what a protagonist he is. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to Reverend Ray McCall. Our man is made from 3 ingredients: grudge.
That bastard child's been a burden on this earth since the day he was born.
Pure menace.
Get out of here! Out! Or I swear to—
An utmost dedication to quote the Bible while doing the other two. If you thought Billy's whip is helpful, then you haven't seen Ray's trusty old holy book. One click and you're dispensing the righteous words of divinity.
And there was given to the beast a mouth, speaking great things and blasphemies.
You can even dual wield it alongside a pistol, lead for the body and the holy words for the spirit, as I like to say. Did I ever mention that this game was made by people from Poland, by the way? Ray made it his mission to save the souls of every person in this town. After a bad case of guilt-ridden nightmares, he calls everyone to his service, which serves as our introduction to this glorious character. Few come, but most interestingly, a town's pimp is here ready to humiliate our beloved Reverend. I'm not so much insulted by the nerve of this heathen as being entirely confused by his teleportation abilities. The sermon is supposed to take place right as Billy is running away from this guy's men as he was hanging around the saloon, so yeah, moving on. Just as Ray is about to launch the holiest of diss tracks against the pimp, news of the attack on his brother's farm arrives. Worried beyond measure, he rushes to see what happened, and as he comes there, he sees his brother and his wife dead, and Billy is stepping into the crime scene. Since I didn't get to mention that Ray's brother was Billy's abusive stepfather, it definitely didn't take much for the Reverend to suspect the young man. As the latter runs away, Ray is set on a warpath with one of the most badass dialogue setups I could ever imagine.
That bastard child's been a burden on this earth since the day he was born. Shiftless, no-count coward. How dare he end a life as righteous as my brother's? If I could, I would kill him, Lord. Is that what you want from me? To be your sword? I've spent 20 years preaching to hyenas and wolves, but maybe there are some who are beyond redemption. Is that what you're telling me, Lord? To destroy those who cannot be saved? Is that what you want? Then that is how I will serve you. And I will execute great vengeance upon them with furious rebukes, and they shall know that I am Jehovah when I lay my punishment upon them.
As a side note, most of the exposition is done via the game's loading screens. It was a welcome addition when it was launched, since the levels took some time to load. I'm surprised that even on my modern system they're not loading very fast either, but I'm not going to judge the compatibility of software and hardware 15 years apart too much. What's certain is that these narrations are well worth the listen, particularly Ray's. It's in no small part due to Mark Alaimo's acting prowess, who does an excellent job portraying an absolutely terrifying gunslinger. And if that name doesn't ring a bell, he is the one who played Gul Dukat in Star Trek. Going back to the story, Ray's all geared up and ready to deliver justice for his brother's murder. But just as he's about to leave, in the midst of chaos, the sheriff is shot and all hell breaks loose.
Oh my god!
What the fuck is his objective? Holy shit! This level makes two things really clear right away. First, this should have been the introductory level of the game. I don't give a crap about the story's flow. It's easy to adjust when you plan it out anyway. You've got everything you need here. Town shooting, attempted prison escape, and a glorious arson to close it off. Much better first impression than the mess of a slog we've gone through playing as Billy. And second, the shooting feels really great. All guns are top notch in terms of how they handle, and gunfire has a big oomph to it. Prolonged fights leave a ton of smoke and debris behind. These two elements have been overlooked by many shooters when they are, in fact, amongst the most important if you want to make the gunplay feel great for the player. If the gun sounds weak, they'll be perceived as such, regardless of how good they are. An amusing example was in Wolfenstein Enemy Territory, when playtesters perceived the Thompson machine gun as significantly better than the MP40. As the video made by People Make Games showed, this was solely because of how they sounded, with the two guns otherwise being identical. In Call of Juarez, all guns have deep blasts and the overall sound design makes for a really satisfying experience. The fact that enemies fly left and right the moment they bite dust further goes to sell the impression that every gun you shoot is powerful and makes cleaning maps ever so more enjoyable. The smoke and debris play an essential role in highlighting the destruction you leave behind. Nowadays, most shooters toned it down by quite a margin for the sake of readability, which is understandable when it comes to multiplayer, but it's a massive shame that you can't light up a room with bullets and end up wholly blinded by dense clouds of smoke and dust as you used to. I'm delighted to tell you that this is a reality in Call of Juarez. Intense fights are a joy to watch from this point of view. Even better, long-range engagements also provide interesting visual feedback with smoke clouds violently blown away by subsequent shots. I have to say that in many ways, Techland's Chrome engine delivered a lot of neat graphical tricks that easily hold up to this day. As a side note, Call of Juarez is one of the first games to come out supporting DirectX 10, and they surely didn't pull any stops in using its new features. Last but not least, you're introduced to the concentration mechanic. This involves drawing guns with both hands and entering a very intriguing and particularly slow motion sequence. In it, two cursors, each representing the direction of each gun is firing, slowly move from each side of the screen to the middle of it. Since the left and right mouse buttons fire the weapon on the corresponding hand, you have to carefully aim each and quickly fire while your opponents slowly try to respond to your presence. While it's not super easy to get the timings and aim right, with practice you can headshot quite a few people in rapid succession using this ability. You can also crouch and lean in both directions, allowing you to pull off really cool bullet dodges that come straight out of Matrix. My only complaint is that it recharges very fast, so you can use it for almost all encounters in the first part of the game. It makes things significantly easier, but the reality is that things would be very difficult without this. On hard difficulty, enemies are deadly even on their own. They hit a lot of their shots and 2 to 3 bullets are enough to kill you. Sometimes Ray's armor protects you, but you can't consistently rely on it to stop you from dying, especially when facing the barrel of a shotgun. Another aspect of the game's difficulty comes from the bad readability. Part of it comes from the insane dust and smoke clouds I mentioned earlier, since enemies are completely unimpeded by them, but primarily due to the color palette. I don't know how to explain this or how much is due to my eyes' fault, but enemies blend in a lot in the environment. Really annoying to spot some of them, and at longer distances it becomes even more of a challenge to notice. There were cases where I could see the enemies only after they discharged their weapon. And back to the story, Ray dispenses justice throughout town, including burning the saloon with everyone inside it. The local kingpin/pimp is the last man standing and accuses the good reverend of having lived a not so holy life. Do you want to know what answer Ray gives?
You're no man of God. I know what you are. I know who you are.
And there was given to the beast a mouth, saying great lies and blasphemy.
Self-righteous.
To end things off, you have a classical western showdown with him. I like the way it's implemented. You wait for the timer to reach 0, pull down your mouse to draw the gun and try to shoot your opponent while dodging his bullets. The cursor that shows up is not very easy to control, especially when you have to consider that you're also preoccupied with not getting hit. My only complaint is that you must pull the mouse very violently because it doesn't always register otherwise. And I have high suspicion that it's not very consistent either by the way it behaves. Well, I'm glad we've had so much fun role-playing as God's sword in a poor mining town. You know what the game needs right now? Yep, you guessed it, another Billy platforming and stealth level. He knows that everyone thinks he killed his mother and stepfather, but nobody will believe his innocence. As such, he's trying to get to his sweetheart Molly, the only person he can trust. As he's trying to catch the train to escape Ray's chase, he has to navigate past gangs of bandits who have a more robbery interest in the same train. Did I say stealth? Oh, puff. Silly me, I'm sorry, I meant to say you're going to massacre every living person in this valley with the aid of the game's most broken weapon, the bow. The fucking bow. I mean, okay, sure, the arrows travel slowly and you have to account for their arc, but the slow motion ability is recharged almost instantly, so even a dozen bandits are easy pickings assuming you're not standing out in the open to get shot. That being said, I shouldn't complain too much because this allowed me to skip the stealth section altogether. Don't worry, we won't be able to avoid it forever. In the end, Billy narrowly escapes on the top of the train just as Ray comes out of a mine massacring bandits left and right. That's because as Ray, you dispatch the rest of the bandits in the mines and then follow the train to find Billy. Next morning he finally catches up to it as it was under attack by the bandits who are trying to rob it. These two levels don't have anything impressive to mention except that they're enjoyable to play due to the earlier mentioned gunplay. Although I have to give special mention to this moment where I had to shoot a wooden beam from the other side of the map to unlock a door giving me proper chaser flashbacks.
This isn't happening.
Billy manages to escape unscathed and keeps going to find his beloved Molly. But before he can reach her, he must navigate one of the game's most extensive levels in size. You first have to mow down these wolves that run in a straight line at you, yeah, know, like they do in real life, and then you have to get a horse at the end of, oh god, not another stealth section. I find it very ironic that you go through all this trouble only to be able to jump over a cliff and ride the horse a couple of 100 meters further before having to dismount and do some platforming to proceed. But as I mentioned, this is one of the earliest implementations of horse riding with direct control. From that perspective, it works pretty damn well. I was expecting something significantly worse compared to what we have here. The rest of this section is dedicated to navigating Indian land. On the one hand, some of the level looks designed as if stealth was intended as an option. But you already know what path I chose with my trusty bow in the inventory. I just can't get over how stupid it makes progression look. You'd think that Billy is part Native American and that's why he's so good with it. But no, the kid's half Mexican and literally no explanation is given to us as to why he's so proficient with the bow. We know why Ray has the concentration mechanic, but there's no reason given for Billy being a roided up version of Robin Hood. At least it gave me the creepiest interaction I've had the displeasure with a corpse in a video game. So you finally arrive at Molly's ranch at the end of this treacherous road. Billy can't just waltz in there because the dad's a racist and his helper wants to kick his butt. So naturally you're thrown into... Oh, god damn it, another stealth section with instant fail state. And you have to know what the best part of this is. In the end, you still get caught and you have to fight Chads just as it was bound to happen if you were getting caught anywhere else on the farm. So, why do you make me sneak around again, Techland? Why?
Why are we still here? Just to suffer.
Fortunately, there's not much time to ask such questions because Ray barges in alongside a group of well-armed friends. You see, he walked through the same valley as Billy. Apparently, it was quickly repopulated with natives and wolves, so now we get to kill them again. I get the convenience of reusing the same levels multiple times, but it looks absurd to murder dozens of people mere minutes after the place was cleaned up by the other character. The men he teams up with are Texas Rangers who conveniently also look for Billy, so the collaboration makes perfect sense. An intense shootout later, Ray finally manages to down Billy moments after asserting his innocence. He finally avenged his brother's death. Or at least so he thinks, because on his return to the ranch, he realizes that his newfound friends aren't Texas Rangers and the men he attacked were only ranchers. Realizing that he should have asked some questions beforehand, Ray sets out to rescue Molly to make amends for what he did. But before that, we've got the game's most conflicting level. Billy survived his encounter and was rescued by Calm Water, a wise old native who speaks in riddles and very convoluted phrases. You know, like any stereotypical wise rescuer does in Western stories. This level sets up Billy's most significant character growth moment. After being advised by Molly to stop running, Calm Water encourages the young man to confront his accusers and stand up for himself. I'm always a sucker for character arcs and Billy desperately needed one to become an interesting part of the story. But to prove his strength, he's sent to recover an eagle's feather atop a stiff cliff riddled with a bunch of vertical climbing. I still haven't warmed up to the awkward platforming and I won't change my opinion just because Billy's character-defining moment is at stake. Ultimately, he achieves his goal and returns to Calm Water to show him proof. Unfortunately, the old man is murdered and Billy is captured by the same man who kidnapped Molly. Said men are revealed to work for Juarez, a Mexican crime lord from Juarez. Not really creative stage names in the crime world, I'd have to say. But anyway, he admits to being Billy's long-lost father and is very interested in finding the lost treasures of Juarez. So much so that he beats the shit out of his son in the middle of an otherwise touching family reunion. All that is because poor Billy lost his mother's medallion that contained the key to finding the riches in question. Thus, he's sent out to find the treasures on his own, with the threat of Molly being killed if he doesn't do that. Of course, the moment he does find it, Juarez orders his men to kill Billy to nobody's surprise. Running desperately for his life at the end of the tunnel, with no hope left, Ray comes out miraculously ready to lay down more divine justice. Ray's been through an intense horse chase earlier. The pursuit itself isn't memorable by any means, but it's hilarious to see the carriage carrying Molly zoom out like a race car whenever the mission script demands it in order to add some tension and urgency. No need to make it so obvious, jeez guys. Anyway, the Reverend's arrival in Juarez brings the two most badass moments of the entire game. First, he rushes down the tunnel and outright massacres all the men in his path. Then, after getting an ultimatum to bring the gold in exchange for Molly, Ray just straight up arrives with a Gatling gun and proceeds to massacre dozens of soon-to-be dead Mexican gunslingers. Just imagine the size of the balls of a person that goes in, kills countless of a crime lord's army, and when offered a peace deal, proceeds to bring a bigger gun to kill even more people. I'm in love with this moment and nobody can take it away from me. Billy is told to leave and protect himself, but he returns to help out as much as he can. And he did well to do so, because Juarez managed to trap Ray and Molly and was almost going to burn them alive if he didn't intervene. So he makes his way inside, defeats Juarez in a gun duel, goes to Molly, witnesses Ray getting shot by a Juarez who wasn't actually dead, fistfights Juarez who seems to be on the most potent dose of meth known to man, and emerges victorious once again. But even so, the man's not yet defeated as he produces a knife the size of a Roman gladius, only to be shot by Ray as he draws his final breath. End scene, curtains, applause. As you can see, the story itself is pretty cliché to say the least, but Ray is hands down the best part of it and the main reason it's so memorable. Everything about him works like a charm, from his tremendous voice acting to the fact that he's designed to wear a friggin' medieval plate armor on his chest. Even his movement inspires strength and a menacing aura, with every step a resounding and firm thump on the ground. He's a massively fascinating character with his own important character arc. He starts the game acting like a self-righteous religious zealot, only concerned with what he perceives as right and wrong, with no ability to be humane in his judgment. He's driven by an intense sense of guilt, slowly revealed to be a consequence of his younger days when he also hunted for the gold in Juarez. Ray tragically killed his younger brother, a man of the cloth, a moment which made him vow to renounce his violent ways. Blinded with rage by the death of his other brother, he yet again harmed innocent people, making him realize the truth behind what was happening. Returning to Juarez and killing its crime lord was a way to close the old wounds and complete the circle of violence and death that haunted his past 20 years. As much as I have fun discussing his badass demeanor, it's hard to not be touched by how much heart and soul his character emanates when narrating his darkest moment.
Thomas and I had a younger brother, William. He was the best of us. A man of faith. We were running cattle over the border from El Paso and would spend time in a little cantina in San Lorenzo. That's where I first laid eyes on Marissa. Oh, I knew she belonged to Juarez, but I wanted her for mine. Marissa had other ideas, though. She was in love with Thomas. They ran off together, and I tracked them to these very caverns. Brother William begged me to walk away, but I was crazy with greed. I wanted Marissa. I wanted the gold. But William got between me and Thomas and reached into his coat. I thought he was going for a gun, so I shot him. My little brother. And as he fell, I saw what he was reaching for. A Bible. In that instant, I renounced evil and embraced the Word of God. Oh, we left the gold. We knew it was cursed. And I dedicated my life to serving the Lord. I tried to make amends, but my sins were too great. Anger, hate, pride, arrogance. Oh, Lord, I humbly accept that the time has come for me to offer recompense for my transgressions.
Techland did well to expand on him when they made the prequel Bound in Blood. After finishing the campaign, I have to say it's such a massive shame that there is little to no chance of finding a multiplayer match. I remember playing it back in the day and having an outright blast. As much as I like Fistful of Frags, which I mentioned earlier, it doesn't hold a candle to the intensity Call of Juarez has with its excellent gunplay. God damn, firing the Winchester never gets old. That being said, I enjoyed replaying this game tremendously. I'd like to say that its launch revitalized the Western shooter genre, but I'm not kidding myself. We all know that Red Dead Redemption pulled it off by itself, but even so, Call of Juarez was the first sign that there was still a place for this setting in the gaming world. Considering what other settings saturated the genre over the years, you'd think that Westerns would be more numerous than they are. But looking at the quality of what we have, I don't mind the selection one bit. Thanks to everyone for bearing with me once more. Don't forget to shoot the like and subscribe button and share this video with your like-minded fellers. And until next time, cheers, partners!